Thank you, Alas Concola. I welcome the opportunity to make a short contribution on this budget debate, and I tell you, as colleagues speaking earlier, indeed our party leader and other party spokespersons have outlined our disappointment with some aspects of the budget, but of course it was framed with the backdrop of Brexit. And of course, as we meet here this morning, we don't know what the final outcome of those negotiations will be. We sincerely hope that there will be a successful outcome and that Britain will be able to leave the European Union with a deal. It's an issue that has literally consumed political life in this Oireachtas, in this Parliament, both in the Dáil and the Channel, and at all our committees as well. And for all the deficits and deficiencies in our political system, our Oireachtas, both meeting in plenary session, the Dáil and the Channel, and the committees have worked very hard in relation to ensuring that we have a united front in regard to Brexit, outlining the difficulties and challenges that Brexit poses for all of this island. And of course, it's particularly disappointing that for almost the last 3 years we have had no Assembly or Executive in Northern Ireland, where we could have had a common voice advocating strongly in the best interest of all of the people in Northern Ireland. And it's the shame of the DUP and the Sinn Féin party that they couldn't reach agreements along with the two governments to ensure that the people who elected those Assembly members to Stormont, that they would have their voice heard. And of course, not alone do we not have the Executive and Assembly functioning, it means we don't have the North-South Ministerial Council meeting. And of course, that was one of the very important bodies established under the Good Friday Agreement as well, where the government, our government, would meet with its counterparts, the Executive, on a twice-yearly basis, and then ministers met in sectoral format as well to discuss issues of common concern to their departments, working together, achieving progress, often unheralded and that we didn't know about in the public domain, but doing good and important work on behalf of all of the people of this island and using the potential of the Good Friday Agreement. I have to say, just last week again, I have further questions to the Minister for Enterprise, Business and Innovation in regard to the need to ensure that adequate supports are put in place to assist enterprises through the Brexit difficulties. And I highlighted the particular needs of my own border region and in, for example, Cavan and Monaghan, where we have a huge interdependence with the economy north of us, with our neighbours and friends in Fermanagh, Tyrone and Armagh. Our economies are very interdependent, and when one analyses that regional economy, both north and south, we have great common interests. The major sectors in the economy in those 5 counties is the agri-food sector, construction products sector and engineering. And it has been shown that those are the sectors that would be most adversely affected by Brexit, because they are most heavily dependent on Britain as their export market. So I appeal to the Minister and to the Minister for Enterprise and also to the Minister for Finance to ensure that specific programmes are put in place to assist those sectors in that region through the challenges and the difficulties that will arise, no matter what form of Brexit we have. And on numerous occasions in this House, I appeal to the Minister for Transport as well to prioritise the needs of the border region, the infrastructural needs. We need to have our road infrastructure upgraded. Unfortunately, legacy issues again caused us severe difficulties with lack of investment in infrastructure due to the difficulties and the troubles over so many decades. So, with that region will be most adversely affected, then government needs to prioritise investment in that region to try and assist enterprise and business remain competitive, not alone to create new jobs, but to ensure that we maintain as much as possible the existing employment we have. And of course already, and Brexit hasn't happened, there has been a negative knock-on effect from it. Because I know of businesses myself in both of my counties in Monaghan and Cavan, where they had proposals for investment to expand, to invest. Those proposals were put on hold because of the uncertainty that has arisen from Brexit. Could I just refer to housing? And of course, it's absolutely scandalous that last month alone we had 10,700 people homeless, including 70 children. This government has failed abysmally in the whole area of housing, and it's most disappointing that we have not had the rate of progress in providing social housing for our people. And can I just say, in one area alone, when Antánaiste was Minister for Housing, I had sought repeatedly with him through parliamentary questions and in other debates to ensure that the income eligibility limits for social housing would be increased. We have the reality is now that not only can people not get council houses, they can't even get on the list to be considered for council housing. I gave the example in this House before of a lone parent, a young woman with 3 children going to school. She was working in a 4-day-week job, poorly paid. She was getting family income supplement. She still couldn't get on the council housing list. It's absolutely ludicrous that the family income supplement payment is factored in as part of your income when being assessed as an applicant for social housing. That person and thousands of others like her have no chance whatsoever of getting a mortgage from a financial institution, and at the same time they don't qualify to be eligible to be considered for social housing. We have been promised year after year, as it is at this stage, a review of those income eligibility limits, and nothing has happened. Equally again, we have so many empty council houses throughout the country, and the department provides very limited funding to local authorities to upgrade and bring back into habitable use empty houses, known as voids. The department needs to properly fund local authorities to ensure that they have the resources to bring up to standards those houses that have been vacant for some time. Walk through any housing estate in any town in the country. It's a very regrettable sight to see houses boarded up and the councils don't have the funding to put them up, bring them up to the standard so that a family or an individual could be allocated the tenancy of such a house. Again, it's very bad housing policy. Could I just also mention, I welcome the increase in home help hours, but it's not adequate either. I know in the region that Askin Corla and myself represent, Sligo, Leitrim, Donegal, Cavan and Monaghan, we have a huge waiting list for people to be provided with home help, home support. The applicant, the patient, is approved, but then they may wait up to an average of 80 days before the service is put in place. In many instances, that person is in a residential nursing unit or an acute hospital, and they need that particular support. And it actually would be saving money for the Exchequer instead of having the additional costs of person being in a residential unit, whereas that person wants to remain in their own home. Minister, we had an exceptionally good presentation in the AV room yesterday by Acquired Brain Injury Ireland, where they outlined the need to provide services to ensure that people who had strokes, who suffered a brain injury, that they would get the necessary support. Acquired Brain Injury Ireland is doing exceptionally good work, and I would appeal to the Minister to bring back to his colleague in health the need to ensure that that particular organisation is funded properly, and that their requests for a regional neuro rehabilitation centre would be progressed without further delay. Could I also say the whole area of mental health? At Fianna Fáil's insistence, additional funding has been provided over the past few years, but unfortunately the services are far from adequate. Not alone do we need funding allocated, we need the policies and the programmes put in place and the personnel and the clinicians to be appointed to ensure that services are brought up to a proper standard. All of us in this chamber at the moment, we represent rural constituencies, and one issue that has to be of major concern to us is the proposal at EU level to reduce the capped budget post-2020 by 5%. If you calculate that over a 7-year period, it would literally amount to a 15% cut by the end of the term of that budget period. The Taoiseach has indicated his opposition to it. I would sincerely hope that An Taoiseach will enlist the support of other government leaders to stop the proposal that will do huge damage to farming throughout Europe and to the agri-sector as well. The Common Agriculture Policy is not about a transfer of funds to the farming sector. It's about ensuring that Europe has a secure supply of safe food for its citizens, and it also plays a very important environmental role as well with the different schemes. So it's extremely important that Ireland resists very, very strongly any reduction in the CAP budget. And of course it was disappointing that in the term of the Fine Gael Labour government, when our country held the presidency of the European Union, that the previous CAP policy was finalised and agreed, and unfortunately a 10% cut in that funding for the first time in the history of the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP funding was reduced. Again, I would say to the Minister, I would like you to bring back to the Minister for Transport, the Minister for Finance, the Minister for Public Expenditure, the need to ensure that the border region is prioritised for investment. And on one concluding issue, Minister, I spoke to you previously regarding concerns of communities in Monaghan and Marracloon in regard to the subsidence issue there that occurred some time ago, and I was very glad that along with others I requested you to meet a local group, and you did. So I would ask you to ensure that your department keeps in mind the concerns of the local community there and works with them to allay their fears and ensure that safety issues are dealt with in the best possible way. Thank you. That's Concórdia.